Alright, I want to show you how to warp your loom using the direct peg warping method. We love this method because it's so easy and it's a very fast way to get your warp on the loom. So when it says direct peg, what it means is we're going to go from the beam to the peg. So you're going to measure everything on the loom, roll on, and then finish threading the heddle. So it's super fast. So first of all, you got to choose your heddle. So in this case, we have a 10 dent. I like to mark it in this where the center is. So I always have the center marked. So since this is a 15.5-inch heddle, I'm going to mark here with a pencil, and you can always erase this at the middle mark. I'm going to do a 4-inch wide warp. So then I'm going to measure out 2 inches on each side of the center. Again, you can always erase these marks if you don't want them later on. Now, I like to put the heddle with these staple marks on the back, and then I can also easily see when I'm threading where I'm supposed to go. So now I have my apron bar over the back beam, and I'm pulling on this. I know I've gone around the right way because it's holding. So that's always a good test. So then I'm going to start with a blue color. And I'm going to tie on kind of along where I'm going to start threading, which is there, so approximately here. And I'm just going to tie a square knot. So when you're planning a project, you have to decide how long your warp is going to be. So if, say for example, you have a 3-yard warp, the distance from here to the peg should be 3 yards. So you'll just have to measure that with a tape measure. So this is the first thing you do is go here from the other side of the reed, and we're going to just thread the spots. So took a loop with my threading hook, and I'm going to put that loop around the peg. And now I'm coming back. I'm going to do the next thread. And so again, I'm going to go into the slot. I'm skipping all of the holes. I'm just doing the slot. So you're going to have 2 threads in each slot. So one thing that confuses people in the beginning is, because this is a continuous thread, sometimes it's over the rod and sometimes it's under. So now you see it's under. This is just naturally how the thread goes, and you'll see when I come back, it wants to go under. Over. The other thing so let's look at this. See how now this thread is over? That's just the natural way that it goes. People ask me, is the hook supposed to be turned up or down? And that's just your personal preference. What is most comfortable for you? I tend to do it both ways. So still see this is going under now. So this is a 10 dent reeds, which means I have 10 ends or 10 warp ends in 1 inch. So let's see how many I've done. I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times 2. So I've done 1 inch or 10 threads. So I'm going to tie this off now, and then we're going to do 2 inches of a light color, and then we'll come back and do the border in this dark color. So I'm just going to tie, well, there's 2 ways to do this. I could tie here, or I could just tie on to the next thread, which I'll show you both ways. So I'm just going to kind of take that right at where it is on the apron bar. I'm just going to tie a knot. This here part is called waist. It's your loom waist. You're never going to weave that because you can't weave beyond the heddle. So the fact that that knot's up there a little bit doesn't matter because you can't weave there anyway. And you can see how this is a really fast system. And when I teach weaving, I have two people doing it, and then it's even faster. So one person's threading the heddle, and the other person's taking the thread around the peg. So you notice I'm skipping all the holes. So later on, after we roll this all on, you will be threading the holes. So don't worry, they're not going to be totally left behind. With one person, this is super fast because I don't have to walk anywhere. Now what do we do when we're here? So you have decided, do I want to stay in that one or do I want to go over here? And I'm choosing to hop over that cord there. So what I'm putting on now is the warp. So the warp is what goes on the loom. And some people say you have to be warped to weave, so that's how they remember which is the name of the yarns that go on the loom. The yarns that we're going to be weaving are called the weft. So the warp goes on the loom and the weft crosses it. Let's see how many threads we have here. So if I put my hand under here, it's easier to see. So I have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I got a little enthusiastic, so I got to go back, take this one off. Okay, so now we're ready to change colors, and I'll show you another way to do that here. So I'm just going to cut this color off. I'm just going to put that in through that loop, pull it tight. And then I'm going to tie it the best I can so it's secure. Okay, so then I'll start the new color with a new knot. Okay, so now we'll do the last threads here for our 4 inches. And you can see, this is not taking me that much time. It's very understandable, and you don't have to measure and then bring your yarns over to the loom, which is just another step in getting your loom warped to weave. happened here. So we have a lot of patterns on our website. So if you're new to weaving and you're like, I don't know what to weave, you can go there and there's instructions. So that's a really good way to start learning to weave, is to look at projects that have been done. And maybe you don't want to weave the exact same thing, but at least you can see what yarn were they using, what was the set. So the set, it means how many ends in an inch. So in this case we have 10, so that would be called 10 EPI, ends per inch, or a 10 ends per inch set. So when you weave, you have what's called PPI, picks per inch. So that's how many wefts do you have per inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so now we have all of our threads measured. All right, so now what's next? What's next is we got to take this yarn off the peg. So sometimes people think that's kind of scary. It looks like I have a thread underneath this. Here, so I left that over there. So I'm going to have my finger here. I'm going to hold it. I don't want it to pop back. I'm going to lift that off. I still have the loop there. And now I'm going to cut that loop. And then I'm going to tie a loose overhand knot. The only reason I'm using this knot is when I start rolling on, I'm going to be paying attention to that. I might not notice that I'm getting to the end of my warp, and I want to be sure that I don't go all the way through the heddle. So now it's time to wind your warp on. So I'm going to go until it starts crossing itself, like here. And then I'm just going to kind of secure this around a little bit just to keep it from moving. And I'm going to put the paper in to divide the layers. So you want to divide the layers so the different layers of your warp aren't crossing each other. So what I like to do, I say no tension is tension. So generally I'm not pulling from this end. What I'm doing is I'm holding this paper firm, and then I pull on it to tighten it, and then I pull that back. So then I line on some more, trying to keep the paper straight. And then I pull down to tension it. Because if you don't get the tension tight as you're rolling on, it's going to want to tighten up as you are weaving. So you want to get it on pretty tightly. And then when you're here, this maybe have to go back a little bit, but because you're going to need to tie on now to your front apron bar. So then I'm just going to give it one last tug, and now we have the warp on the beam. So our next step is to thread the holes. So I'm at the front of the loom. I have my heddle in neutral, and you can see I have 2 threads in each slot, and now I'm going to put one of those threads into a hole. So I'm going to untie my knot, and what I usually do is I keep part of it in a little slip knot, and just in case I bump the loom, I don't want all those threads to come out, so that those are just kept safe. So now I'm going to take, on this side, I'm going to take one of those 2 threads out. So I have a choice now. I can go either to the right into the hole or the left in the hole. And in this case, I'm going to go to the right. So that means as you go across, you're always going to go to the right from the slot. So I'm going to put my my heddle hook in through the hole. I make a loop and I grab the loop and I'm pulling on it so that if you tug on it a little bit, it's going to be easier to get through that hole. So taking one thread out, making my loop, and I have my hook pointed up, keeping a little tension on it as I bring it through the hole. And then I'm just putting all these to the side just so they're out of my way. And now I take another one, take it out of the slot, and put it into the hole to the right. And I just move that slot one over. I go to the next slot, take one out, put it in there. So now you're going to have one thread in a slot and one thread in a hole. A common error that people make is they forget to thread the holes, and then they're like, well, nothing's happening. Well, it's because you only have half the threads really threaded. So that's something to look for if you say, none of my threads are going, they're going up and down, but they're going all together. It's because you didn't thread the holes. And I've done that myself, so I know that even experienced weavers can make that mistake. I've got this much done. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, the ones I've just threaded. I'm going to tie a little slip knot just so keep things from moving around. Making that loop really does help, and holding it under tension really helps control the threads. And even when I'm here getting these threads, see how I have these under tension? That helps me grab one easily and bring it through. Alright, so now this is my last thread, and you will notice I'm going to end in a slot, and that's just the way it happens. So this side, the right side, has the edge thread in the hole, and this side has the edge thread in the slot. Okay, so now that is done, we're ready to tie on to the front. So the next step is to tie on to the front apron bar. So I have brought it, I release my tension so I could bring it up and around over the mid beam here, and now I'm going to start tying on. So I like to start kind of in the middle to give it some support, and since we have 4 inches, I'm just going to take an inch. I like to tie on in inch groups, because then you'll see later that doesn't, I don't need to use so much time to spread the warp. So I have an inch here just off center, and then I'll do the other inch. So I'm going to go over the beam. I've divided my group in half, and I don't have it quite so long. So I've got those 2 on the outside. Now they're going to go meet in the middle. I'm going to go around once, Then I'm going to go around again, and that's called a surgeon knot, and I like it because it holds while I do the other knots. So when I tighten it, I'm not just going like that, I'm bringing it up around the apron bar. So now I'll do this other side, dividing these in half, going around the beam, over the top. So I have two, like about a ½ inch on each side. I bring them together in the middle. I'm going to go around once and twice. It's just like tying your shoes, except you go around twice. Then I'm going to pull up and down, and I'm just going to tie the outside. So I've got two sides, two parts, coming to the outside, meeting in the middle, going around once, twice. And I'm going to tighten it up. To the outside, meet in the middle, around once and twice. Okay, so now I have it partially done. So what I feel here, see how this has more spring than this one I just tied, so I'm going to tighten those up, because you want to start with your warp even. And the nice thing about this method, if you start weaving and you realize it isn't even and you haven't gone around your front beam, you can still adjust it. So that's one reason I like this method. So this just doesn't feel quite as tight. So you can see I'm just kind of padding here and feeling, does that feel the same? Is it looser? Is it tighter? Okay, so that feels pretty good to me. Okay, all right, so now to finish, I'm just going to tie a bow tie. So if I have to take this out, I can. I'm not having to untie a knot, so that's why I like this method. So now you're all warped and ready to weave.